would you please call the roll?
Senator Esslinger.
Here.
Senator Brown. Senator Beck. Senator Black. Senator Crawford. Senator Mosley. Senator Trent. Senator Black.
Okay.
You have established a quorum.
We have a quorum, just barely. Good deal. Okay, so we have 5 bills that we're going to be hearing today, as well as 4 bills that we're going to be executing out. And as sort of basically a roadmap for what we're going to do in committee today, we're going to start by hearing House Bill 1064, and then we're going to enter into an exec session, and we're going to vote out all 4 bills, and then we're going to hear the rest of the bills that are on our docket for today. So Representative Baker, would you like to come forward? We're ready for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee, for the opportunity to hear this bill. House Representative Ben Baker, 160th District, for the record. House Bill 1064 is really, I'll give a brief summary of the long, drawn-out negotiations that have happened with this bill. So last year, this was passed out of the House, passed by the legislature, signed by the governor on the Personal Privacy Protection Act. Which is aimed at protecting privacy of nonprofit donor information, rights to free speech, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, all of that. And so you might remember, and this was passed by a large margin last year as well. I think in the House it was like 129 to 13, and in the Senate 27 to 6. But there was some misinterpretation of the language by OA, and which led to really suspending the state's transparency portal with OA. So since then, there's been a lot of negotiation between OA and the other stakeholders on this language to make sure we get to the place everybody agrees on and where that transparency portal can be turned back on. That's the purpose of this bill, and I think we have arrived at that place, and that's what is in the language with the sub. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any witnesses for Representative Baker? Senator Crawford.
Really just more of a comment. Thank you for bringing this forward, because I had the bill last year, and that it was never our intention to have that issue with
Absolutely.
OA at all, so I appreciate you bringing it forward.
No problem.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we can have our first testimony in favor of. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Senators. Tom Dempsey, registered lobbyist for People United for Privacy. I testified for this language as a part of 919 last week. Won't be redundant. I don't want to point any fingers. We did work with departments as they came forward last year. That being said, when it passed, a few more came forward, and so we worked with the Office of Administration and others to address their concerns and still meet the goals of the legislation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Sam Panettiere on behalf of the City of Kansas City. I want to go on record in support of the bill. This fixes a couple problems for us. We have a couple of events, couple of projects going on where we partner with nonprofits. Like, for example, we had our new terminal open at our airport this year, and we had some equipment donated for the all-inclusive playground there at the terminal. When we were constructing it, you know, the donors were going to have their names displayed as they should, and then this law was passed, and I don't think it was the intention of anyone to do this, but so then our folks say that we can't disclose those names at this time until this issue's fixed. So appreciate the representative bringing the legislation forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Next. Good morning, Katie.
Katie Gamble here on behalf of the Friends of the Kansas City Zoo. I want to go on record in support to similar language as to what Sam was just speaking on regarding just wanting to make sure that we can post names of donors who want their names posted on, for example, tanks at the new aquarium. So.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you. Good morning, James.
Good morning. Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, James Harris, representing the Institute for Free Speech, just here to go on the record in support of House Bill 1064.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Seeing none. Next witness. Good morning.
Hannah Swan with the Office of Administration. As said by all of the individuals who testified before me, this bill will solve some problems for OA and others that were unintentionally created with the passage of 1064. We've worked collaboratively on this language, and we're all very much in support of it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next witness. Is there anybody here that would like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none. Are there anyone here that would like to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none. Representative Baker, do you have any closing remarks? Thank you. That concludes our hearing on House Bill 1064. And with that being said, we're going to start. I'm going to move that we go into executive session. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are in executive session. So now I move that we bring House Committee Sub for House Bill 919 and 1081 before the committee. Do I have a second? The bill is before the committee. And now I have a committee substitute, and I move that we adopt the Senate Committee Substitute for House Committee Substitute House Bill 919 and 1081. Do I have a second? So basically what this substitute includes three changes, and one is the language that would affect the underlying bill would be exempting out some of the car rental companies that are from being unable to track some of their fleet cars. Of course, they want to be able to do that. And second, it also includes some language from Senate Bill 103, sponsored by Senator Trent, to provide privacy protections for judges. That was passed out of this body at 31-1 earlier this year. And lastly, it includes House Bill 1064, which obviously we just heard just now. Any discussion on the adoption of the substitute? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting the Senate Committee substitute say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Do you have Is there a question here? You have adopted the Senate Committee substitute. I now move that we do pass Senate Committee Substitute, House Committee Substitute, House Bill 919 and 1081. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any further discussion on the do pass motion? Seeing none. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Esslinger.
Aye.
Senator Brown. Senator Beck. Senator Black. Senator Crawford. Senator Mosley. Senator Trent.
By your vote of 6-0, you have voted do pass on Senate Committee Substitute, House Committee Substitute, House Bill 919 and 1081. So I now move that we bring Senate Bill 670 before the committee. Do I have a second? Thank you. The bill is now before the committee. And I move that we don't have a sub for this, obviously, so I do move that we do pass Senate Bill 670. Do I have a second? As a reminder for the committee, this is the Interstate Compact for Social Workers that we heard in committee last week. Is there any discussion on this bill? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Esslinger.
Aye.
Senator Brown. Senator Beck. Senator Black. Senator Crawford. Senator Mosley. Senator Trent.
By your vote of 6-0, you have voted do pass on Senate Bill 670. I now move that we bring House Committee Substitute House Bill 870 before the committee. Do I have a second? The bill is before the committee. I move that we do pass House Committee Substitute House Bill 870. Do I have a second? As a reminder for the committee, 870 includes the child care tax credits that this committee has previously voted out. It also includes a non-refundable tax credit for employment-related expenses for up to 2 qualifying children. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Esslinger. Aye. Senator Brown. Senator Beck. Aye. Senator Black. Senator Crawford. Aye. Senator Mosley. Senator Trent.
By your vote of 5-1, you have voted do pass on House Committee Substitute House Bill 870. Senator, I now move that we bring House Committee Substitute for House Bill 1162 before the committee. Do I have a second? The bill is before the committee. Whoops. I move that we do pass House Committee Substitute for House Bill 1162. Do I have a second? As a reminder for the committee, House Bill 1162 would help expand the residency slots in Missouri through additional grants through the Department of Health and Senior Services. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Esslinger. Aye. Senator Brown. Aye. Senator Beck. Senator Black. Senator Crawford. Senator Mosley. Senator Trent.
By your vote of 6-0, you have voted to pass House Committee Substitute House Bill 1162. So now we're going to make a motion to move out of executive session and resume our regular hearing. Do I have a second? Thank you. I have a second, and we now resume our regular hearing. So with that said, we're going to hear now House Bill 76. Representative Kelley, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for hearing House Committee Substitute House Bill 76. For the record, I am Ann Kelley, representative of District 127. For the last few years, we've had a strong concentration on increasing our workforce in our state. Fast Track was created to help adults better themselves by going back to school to obtain a certificate or a license. We have also increased accessibility to A+ by allowing seniors through dual credit courses to start taking advantage of their A+ that they have earned by reaching specific requirements set by the state. Currently, a student who wants to obtain a certificate or license right out of high school, for example, CDL, CNA, CMT, or EMT, must pay for these out of pocket because the courses are too short to qualify for the A+ reimbursement program and are not Pell eligible. Many of these programs are not a full semester in length. They consist of intense instruction every day for a few weeks or a couple of months. These students are typically ones who are not interested in going to a 2-year or 4-year school. They want to obtain a certificate or license so they can go ahead and make a decent living. Needless to say, a high school graduate does not typically have $5,000 or $10,000 in their pocket, so many end up working at Walmart or a restaurant. Or now they can wait until they're 25 or 2 years out of high school and utilize the Fast Track program. House Committee Substitute House Bill 76 creates the Career Tech Certificate Program for these students and will eliminate this gap. This program ensures that the state of Missouri is creating an opportunity for all students, not just the students who are going to college. Our skilled trade careers have a huge workforce shortage, and this program will help meet those demands while also opening doors and paths to successful futures. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Representative Kelley? Senator Black.
Thank you, Representative Kelley. As you probably remember, Career Tech Ed is something, I like all education, but Career Tech Ed is probably something I care about more. But I've also, another part of me or interest is the budget of our state as well. This, make sure I understand this correctly, this will create another scholarship program within state government, correct?
Correct.
To try to fund.
Correct.
Have any estimates at this point in time what that dollar amount might look at? And I'll tell you, you probably tell that I'm concerned about doing this because of the time we spent trying to get Access Missouri completely refunded again. That finally happened recently. The A+ scholarship, keeping it fully funded, and even adding the language that we added to it that you referenced caused me pause because of the millions of dollars that we're going to do it. And right now our state's in good shape to be able to do this and probably do this bill. But in the future, when it comes time that we have to be tough, it's going to be, is the last on, the first off the list on funding, or et cetera. So is there a guesstimate? I didn't look back through here. I think it was $3 or $4 million possibly. And how did that estimate come about?
So we have morphed this bill several times. The original fiscal note was $47 million, and so we have it down to one certificate program, and it's based upon kids who graduate who are not attending those two-year universities. So that's what the fiscal review people came up with, so a little over $3 million.
Okay. All right, and then one last question. Whenever I looked at this earlier this week, why does it talk about mileage within facilities? What's the, I guess what I'm saying, it looks to me like if a kid went to school on one of these programs in Chillicothe, where I live at, with North Central being 20 miles away, then they probably can't access this fund.
So,
Do
no.
I understand that or not?
So there are two-year colleges that have some of these programs. And so basically it's saying that if there's a two-year college within that mileage, then you need to go to that two-year college. But if there's not a two-year college that has the program that you're wanting, then you have the opportunity to do a private.
Okay. My last question, and maybe, I don't know whether you got people here that are going to testify for or against this, but did you say there's just one certificate that is going to fall in the category of receiving this now? What is that certificate?
No, every the individuals that qualify for this can obtain one certificate.
Oh, okay.
Not just one specific
Oh,
certificate.
I thought maybe this
I'm
was
sorry.
one particular
No,
training
no,
industry and we were
no.
just funding it through this.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further questions? Senator Baker? Brown? I don't know. You know, I've known Ben Baker a long time. I've just been...
It's early. On the summary page, the last paragraph there says the bill provides reimbursement for students for one certificate program or completion of a program of study, or until a student has completed 150% of the time usually required to complete such a program. What can you elaborate
Why
on?
that 150% is in there? It's
Yeah.
a federal thing that they put in that
Okay.
language. So it's the same language that A+ has and that Fast Track has,
Okay.
where
Thank you.
most of this comes from.
Sounds good.
Any further questions for this witness? Senator Beck?
I just want to be clear too. Good morning. So on this certificate, this is something currently that can happen now if you go to a junior or a community college and it has this program and you take the 2-year degree, you can get this within the parameters of the A+, right?
No, you cannot.
You cannot.
So these are non-A+ eligible, non-Pell eligible programs.
If you would just take these programs, what I'm saying is if you went on and got a 2-year degree and this was in the curriculum.
So most of these programs occur every single day for a month or 2 months. And so you're not taking other classes at that point. So in full time, you have to go a whole semester and take 12 hours. It's full time. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
these are programs that are not a full semester generally, and they're just shorter programs, certificate programs.
Okay. So and these do not receive credits now in community college?
So most of them have already transformed their hours into credits for the fast track. So it's using the fast track groundwork and merging that kind of with A+
And
without.
and fast track covers this currently?
Yes.
So
It's
that would be
basically all the
anyone
programs-
over 26 years old or would be qualified for this program currently?
On the fast track.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I have one. No, it's for clarification. So the students that are eligible for this program, are they A+ certificated? Have they received their A+ designation?
Yes.
Okay, so they haven't met the attendance and the academic requirements. The reason that this is necessary may be because of, one, you have a gap because of your age requirement for fast track. and the program in which they are interested in is not covered through A+ because it's not part of a program or a 2-year part. It's a shorter period professional certification of a 6-8 week professional licensure or cert that gets them in the door for a job. Is that pretty much it?
Perfectly said, yes.
Okay. It's just clarification, I think. Okay, any further questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll have our first witness in testimony in favor of, sorry. Is there anybody here who would like to testify in favor of? Seeing none, anybody here who would like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none, informational purposes only. Seeing none, thank you. Do you have any closing remarks? All right, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go on and to House Bill 1102. With that being said, Representative Stevens, if you're here, whenever you are ready. Thank you.
Without the name of the collaborating physician to go along with it.
Okay. Are there any witnesses for, are there any questions for Representative Stevens? Okay. So,
Virtually a simple bill.
simple bill. Okay. So I have a just clarifying. So basically, what your bill is going to do is that removes the requirement of having the
Right.
collaborative practice physician, along with the nurse practitioner's
Right.
signature on the script.
And physician's assistants also have prescription
Okay.
authority.
And has this come about mainly because of a software that you actually can easily put on one name
Well,
on the script?
You can, but who are they? I mean,
Right,
that's the
yeah.
deal. You can't chase them down.
Yeah, and does this reduce any liability between the physician and the APRN?
It does not.
I think that's important for us to clarify. So, okay, are there any further questions for Representative Stevens? Seeing none, do we have our first testimony in favor of? Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, Organ Schlemmer on behalf of the physician assistants. Exactly correct. One added item to that is that the DEA actually regulates prescriptions with respect to scheduled drugs, and they very specifically say, as does our Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs in the state of Missouri through the Department of Health, very clearly states only the prescriber's name should appear on the label of the prescription. And so we're Actually got a letter, I clarified that with the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. We're quasi out of compliance with that rule with the statute, and this simply cleans that piece up.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Be sure you leave a witness form. Next.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Chairman, excuse me, and members of the committee, my name's Kaina Iman on behalf of the Missouri Nurses Association. We support this legislation as stated.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Next witness. Seeing none. Do we have any witnesses like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none. In informational purposes only? Seeing none. Do you have any closing remarks, Representative Stephen?
Thank you for your time and for the time of the committee.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to House Bill 45. Representative Haley, whenever you're ready. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I am to present House Bill 45 and 1066 to you today. I am Willard Haley for the record. I represent the Missouri House District 58, representing Monotol and Morgan counties, a small portion of Cooper County. I want to point out that this passed the Professional Registration Licensing Committee by a vote of 10 to 1, the Legislative Oversight Rules Committee by 7 to 0, and after being perfected, it passed out of the House on third read by a vote of 133 to 2. So we're talking about a very non-controversial bill. It's kind of composed of three components. The first component is about cosmetology. This came to my awareness after or during COVID, whenever cosmetologists were being asked to go to nursing homes and individuals' homes, and I found out that they were limited with their licensing to only doing 49% of their work away from their brick and mortar establishment, and so it became aware that we needed to have a different type of license or registration for them so that they could do more work in individuals' homes or nursing homes or something like that. So this will create a personal services registration, which will provide services to patients who are to clients who are homebound or unable to visit them in a cosmetology establishment. The second component changed the definition of tattoo to tattooing requirements of to include insertion of ink or both ink and pigment with the aid of needles or blades using handheld or machine-powered instruments. It includes a mark on the face or body or another person for cosmetic purposes or to any part of the body or coverage or other corrective purposes by insertion of a pigment, ink, or both pigment and ink under the skin with the aid of needles. And the third component deals with administrator licensing for Missouri's care facilities. It's some cleanup language that is recommended by the department. It basically aligns the Missouri Sunshine Law and provides a consistency with the Missouri Licensing Board under the Division of Professional Registration. And so these are all three non-controversial items that I hope that we can get approved. With that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for our representative? Seeing none, thank you. We'll have our first witness and testimony in favor of. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Seville Warren, and I'm here to testify for House Bill 1066 and 45. I am licensed in Missouri as a tattoo artist. I've been licensed since 2009. I'm also licensed in the state of Kansas as a tattoo artist and a trainer for tattooing. I'm a member of the American Academy of Micropigmentation as a platinum trainer. I'm also a member of the SPCP, which is the Society of Permanent Cosmetic Professionals. And in 2021, I took a CPCP test, which is Certified Permanent Cosmetic Professional Test, and I did test the highest in the nation among my peers. So with that being said, I would like to be in support of this bill. What I would like to bring to the table is that there are other professions currently that are regulated and licensed that are less invasive than the procedures that we're performing as cosmetic tattoo artists. So for example, cosmetologists have to use clippers to clean up the back of the neck and things like that cause micro tears in the skin. They are licensed and regulated through the state of Missouri. Barbers are the same. They're using straight razors or other razors to clean up the face and the neck, also regulated. Then we have nail technicians that are taking skin and using instruments to take off pieces from the hands and the feet. And then finally, we have estheticians that are licensed and regulated through the state of Missouri that do dermaplaning that require a scalpel to the face, causing micro tears in the skin. So the reason why that is important is because once we are making those tears in the skin, now we're opening everyone up to bloodborne pathogens, which would be the one performing the procedure as well as the consumers of Missouri. So with permanent cosmetic tattooing, we are using needles and machines, whether that is manual or mechanical, to make tears in the skin, or basically going into the second layer of the dermis, creating exposure for bloodborne pathogens. So if you think about the severity of that, it would be a public safety risk, which would mean that regulation and licensing absolutely would have to be in place for the safety of the public. Now, along with that, we think about the demographic that we're working with. So usually elderly clients, a lot of my clients are ranging from the age of 65 to my oldest client of 92 that want these services performed. And then a wide range of our clientele would be people that are autoimmune compromised, as well as cancer survivors. So it is even more important that we have to be licensed and regulated by the state of Missouri in order to ensure the safety of these consumers in Missouri. Do we have any questions?
With that, Senator Black.
Why does the regulations need to be tougher? That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, I don't know that tougher would actually be what it is, because our current language is actually really good in our regulation. However, there has been some confusion in the current verbiage, whether cosmetic tattooing is really the same as body art or traditional tattooing. So this just allows us to have less confusion with something that should already be enforced, so that way everyone has to be required to obtain a license.
Okay. When I asked that, use this plain terminology, here's the next part. Who is this going to cut out of being able to do this that is doing tattooing today on people? If we pass this, are there several people that tattoo maybe rural where I live at, that they're not going to have enough training? They're going to lose the ability to be able to do cosmetic tattoo.
That's a great question.
I don't want to go home and
Right.
find out by a couple of my friends, Rusty, you voted for something and we no longer have a job.
Right. Well, I'm from Clever, Missouri, so I'm from a rural area as well. Currently, these other professions like cosmetology and things like that require a much higher hour rating for them to be licensed. In the state of Missouri, it's only 300 hours. So if you needed to complete a program, you could actually do that in 3 months or less. So the people that you would be out of a job technically would be people that actually attended maybe an online course that are opening the skin and exposing people to bloodborne pathogens, which include, strep, MRSA, hepatitis, HIV, things like that. So these would be underqualified people putting the community at risk. But because of our hours requirements, they could obtain their license in about 3 months.
Okay. I'm going to need to know more about that and ask some people before I'm ready to add this.
For sure.
Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none. Okay, I think we're ready for our next witness. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Sally McKee, and I'm with the Missouri Board of Nursing Home Administrators, and I am here in support of this bill, especially pertaining to Chapter 344 of the new language in the bill. Especially, this board did not have anything in statute to regarding closed records and complaints. And by having this language, this will align with the Missouri Sunshine Law, as well as the other remaining licensing boards that are under professional registration. And the board, as you can see, oversees licensed administrators that oversee the long-term care facilities in Missouri. And this will ensure protection of information, especially of our residents. If we get a complaint, we have to disclose that. And we need to protect our families, especially our Missouri residents. Also, the other part of the language is regarding unlicensed practice. Since this is a professional license, this should provide clarification so that the board can take action, and working with the Attorney General's office to have that clear language to support and possibly disciplining a person that may be practicing without a license overseeing a skilled nursing facility, any facility in Missouri. So I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Hello, good morning. I am here in support of House Bill 451066. My name is Meg Melchert. I'm the co-owner, alongside my husband, of Purgatory Tattoos and Inked and Classy in Oak Grove, Missouri. This is our 23rd year in business. For the last 20 years, I have managed every aspect of our business, and for the last 7.5 years, I have been a full-time licensed and insured tattooist. I'm an advisor for the Jackson County Health Department, and I am also a reference point for other local surrounding counties. I have recently spoken at the Missouri Environmental Health and Safety Conference to all the health departments in the states of Missouri on the topic of microblading and permanent cosmetics. To be a tattooist is an honor, and we are permanently making marks on the bodies of our clients of any age bracket. Tattooing someone's face is not something that should be taken lightly. As a tenured artist, I have seen multiple clients weekly who have been scarred, improperly tattooed, taken advantage of, and now feel extremely insecure due to the damage of untrained service providers offering microblading and permanent cosmetics due to the lack of necessary training. Microblading has become a service where training is rushed with no regard for the consumer. This service has been sold to hopeful technicians as a get-rich-quick service. This is disrespectful to our industry. It is disrespectful to the consumers of Missouri, and is disrespectful to the art and the history that tattooing brings to our community. I know the state can do better. I know we as consumers, the consumers deserve better. And I'm here today in high hopes that regulation change. I'm so sorry. I'm here in high hopes for regulation change so we can do better by requiring state licensing for all permanent makeup cosmetic services. And I would also like to circle back that this is the third time that we have had this bill at this point, and have had great support in the past. So I am really thankful for your time today and listening. And I would just like to touch on the question that you brought a few minutes ago. This isn't eliminating anyone from the workforce. This is just encouraging those who are passionate about this service to get the proper training to execute well. So we're not excluding anyone. There's room for everyone to be successful with the right tools and skills and knowledge and training.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for this witness?
Yeah.
Senator Brown.
So in the cases where people don't necessarily have the qualifications to tattoo, what are there other professions that are generally kind of going into this area and taking this on that are unqualified, or is it just people going around just exclusively offering this service? I think the Senator made the point that, he didn't want to put anyone out of business at a home, but if it's just people trying to just add something onto an existing business, then it seems like that wouldn't necessarily be the case unless there's people going around just promoting just this and only this service and going around offering that.
The way it is now, there is no regulation. So you could technically go take a 2-day online class and legally start offering this service in your kitchen. So it is open to anyone. A lot of very skilled service providers are wanting to add this service on, which is a wonderful added service if they are trained appropriately. But the lack of regulation is allowing people to take the shortcut and take 2, 3, 4-day classes, sometimes in person with support and hands-on training, and most often not, just online, and then going and scarring and tattooing someone's face.
Gotcha. You probably can't tell it from me standing up here. I probably am one of the more tattooed senators, I'd say, that are probably out there. So I've gone through the experience, and I've seen that, it is almost like you're at an operating table or something, that the instruments, they take great care to keep everything sanitized, and so it's a point well taken.
And you can easily cover an undesirable tattoo on an arm or a leg or a back. You can put a shirt on or a piece of clothing, but it's much harder to cover something that is permanently damaged on your face. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Next witness. Good morning.
Good morning. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Nikki Strong with the Missouri Healthcare Association, here to go in support of the bill, and specifically two pieces, the cosmetology piece for our nursing homes, and then also the nursing home administrator piece that was previously discussed. That I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Yes, Senator Beck.
Good morning. So the part with the personal service, is that the part you're testifying in favor of?
No, the cosmetology piece that represents.
Yeah, where they can come
Oh,
into.
yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So, just one question. So your facilities, they shall be checked. They're inspected every year, right? It's not a may, but they
Correct.
should be.
They're
checked?
actually inspected by two entities. You've got the Department of Health and Senior Services that inspects them annually, and CMS that inspects them annually. Then you have complaint surveys in addition to that.
Yeah, and so there's just one part of this bill, and I don't know if it's a game changer for me, but it says the board may inspect the tools and equipment and implements once a year, and then if there's a complaint, they can go in and do it. But it says may. But you're a shall when you inspect your facilities, correct? Don't they?
Yeah.
Is that something that we could look at? Maybe, I don't know.
It's this part actually relates to the person with the personal service registration, that they go around to different facilities to perform cosmetic duties, and that they, if they are a licensed cosmetologist in a brick and mortar building, they are inspected quite frequently. Make sure they're observed, make sure that their tools are and their instruments they use are sanitized and adequate. So one of the concerns from the Missouri Board of Licensing was, how do we know if these people are doing things adequately if they're not in a brick and mortar building? And so they helped design this language so that they can go and maybe observe a person with this kind of registration in a long-term care facility as they go or in a person's home and inspect their equipment. So it's not just in a long-term care facility. It could be that they go to an elderly lady's home and they just get permission from that individual. Can we observe and inspect the tools and make sure that they're doing things appropriately like they would in a brick and mortar business? So it's just something that the the licensing bureau, licensing board requested so that they can make sure everything's up and above.
And I'm happy with them checking. I was just curious about it says may. It didn't say shall. That's the part I was asking.
I think what it is it will be a shall, but it's kind of by surprise. It's like whenever they want to. So they're just saying, hey, we may come this month, we may come next month. I'm sure they're going to inspect, but they just didn't word it that way. And like I said, this is their wording.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Next witness. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Committee. My name is Lynette Charrers. I'm out of St. Louis, Missouri. I have a cosmetic tattoo practice named Flawless Permanent Cosmetics and a training academy named Flawless Inc. I have come into the industry back in I'm trying to stay scripted here, but I have a tendency to go off, so correct me if I get too far off. Anyway, I came into the industry after leaving state government. And one of the reasons I got involved in the industry was because I wanted to get involved in something after having a formal education in something that was actually regulated, which was only became regulated as far as permanent makeup goes in cosmetic tattoo. There's several names you can call permanent makeup cosmetic tattooing. It's also called micropigmentation. It's also called permanent cosmetics. So, however, I started my apprenticeship back in 2011, and I got my license in January of 2012. I've been tattooing ever since then as a full-time employed individual with over 20,000 procedures I've performed in that time. I'm here today to testify on behalf of House Bill, or is it now Senate Bill? That's House Bill 45 and 1066. I'm also a party to the last bill that was formally sponsored by termed out Representative Nate Tate. This is not the first time this bill has tried to pass through the state government. We're working really hard to diligently find a point to where we can actually regulate something that's actually kind of quite frankly gotten out of hand. Across the nation, majority of all 50 states are regulated outside of Nevada and Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. We currently require 50 procedures documented under the supervision of a licensed tattooist, whether that be cosmetic, paramedical, or if you call yourself a body artist, with 300 hours under the regulations of the State Board of Body Piercing and Branding. We've had I'd say the last 6 years, an implosion in the market for microblading. And I think that's really kind of where this comes to a full circle back behind my friends behind me. Microblading per the SBCP, which my colleague represented and told you that is the Society of Permanent Cosmetic Professionals, which is oftentimes a guide for all of us across the nation leading in our profession. Microblading, with the sudden popularity and media attention to the term microblading, many led to believe microblading is not tattoo process. Permanent cosmetics, micropigmentation, dermal implantation, microshading, microblading, eyebrow embroidery, a long time and long-lasting makeup are all different names for the same procedure. Cosmetic tattooing. Anytime color is placed into the skin with any device, it is a tattoo process as defined by many well-informed regulations, the medical community, and dictionary sources. Denying this process as a tattoo can be problematic for those who would, for religious or other personal reasons, normally refuse to have a tattoo. It is a blade being used to perform microblading tattoo procedure. Microblading is performed with a grouping of configuration of needles affixed to a handle and manually creating that resemble eyebrow hairs. Manual methods of tattooing have been used through the ages, and the tools have gone through changes over the time, from prehistoric sharpened stones to the hand tool devices currently being used. An actual scalpel or cutting type blade should not be used under any circumstances, as these are considered medical devices and cannot legitimately be used for that process. Any hand tool device, i.e. both handle or attached needles used for microblading, should be pre-sterilized and fully disposable. Is it semi-permanent? That's another question in the regulations right now currently, and one of the problems we're having with the language that our director, Vanessa, keeps seemingly changing and sending out memorandums to confuse the public and ourselves as licensed tattooists and artists. Some are promoting microblading as eyebrow microblading and embroidery as semi-permanent process, and that color only reaches the epidermal outer layer of the skin. A careful review of basic skin anatomy or physiology would reveal that it is not true. By definition and tattoo industry standards, color is tattooed implanted into the dermis of the skin. If pigment particles do not reach the dermis, they will disappear during the healing phase of the skin. During normal generation of cells of the epidermal level, pigments do fade in the skin over time, but that does not make this process semi-permanent. It is impossible to predict how pigment will fade away or how long it will take to do so with any measure of consistency and reliability.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
If we could wrap, just
Yeah, I'm
summarize,
wrapping it up. But
your...
anyway, with that
Yeah.
said, the training that's currently out there, per our regulations, we're regulated as microbladers.
Sure.
But if I were to open a shop down the street, or like a shop in St. Peter's that was issued a license on probation, she was training without a license 2 years ago, and really shouldn't have been allowed to open, but Vanessa went ahead and issued her a probationary license to go ahead and train. I'm leaving these here. You can pass them around if you want. These are actual blades. I don't think any of you have probably seen them, even though that you, sir, who've had body art or tattoo, probably have never seen a blade.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for this witness? All right, thank you so much for your testimony. Next witness.
They can see it. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As a, just an interest of time, if you could please not repeat some of the same information that we've heard. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather Mortimer-Hinkie. I have been an esthetician for over 20 years. I have been a nail technician for 16 years and a licensed tattoo artist in the state of Missouri for 3 years. I got into tattooing because I had a best friend with cancer, and I wanted to help her renew her confidence, whether it be her brows or her breast. I took microblading course in 2018 and quickly realized that the 2-day course was not enough. I went and got my apprenticeship, so it is possible to still work and get your apprenticeship while you're working to attain your licensing for tattooing in Missouri. Being one of the best in Missouri, I was voted in 2021 as Missouri's best esthetician, Jefferson City's best esthetician 6 times in a row, and Missouri's best cosmetic permanent tattoo artist in 2022. Not only do I get a blessing of flow of clients, I get to see a lot of the jobs that have been botched. So now we're spending more time trying to do corrections and sending people away for removal from botched microblading, non-licensed tattoo artist. I'm trying not to repeat what everybody's been saying, but basically, I take pride in this industry as well as these ladies and a lot of us that have been licensed for over the years. And for us to not have this regulated is really putting a lot of despair on the Missouri citizens walking around with eyebrows we can no longer fix.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you. Next witness, please. Thank you. Anybody who testified? Oh, are you coming in and testify in opposition to? In favor of? Okay. We are running on a pretty tight schedule, and I've got another bill to hear. So if you, and I don't want to not want to receive your testimony, but just don't repeat things we've already heard.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Tina Birch, and I'm here to represent the Missouri Council of Tattoo and Permanent Makeup. I've been a cosmetologist for over 40 years, and I've been a licensed tattoo permanent artist for over 23 years. 8 years ago, there was a procedure that was new that was starting, well, let me back up and clarify that permanent makeup has been regulated, and we've been licensed from the tattoo department. Up until 8 years ago, there was a procedure that started to be called semi-permanent. And the reason we want this bill to pass is because it removes the word indelible out of the definition. So indelible means permanent. And so taking that out of the definition of what a tattoo is in Missouri gives the tattoo department the legal ground they need to regulate it. And up until then, they couldn't. So I did want to also make that it's emphasizing the difference between there's pigment and there's ink. Body tattoo artists will use ink. Permanent makeup artists will use pigment. It's basically the same thing. Some's organic, some's non-organic, but no one regulates the pigment. So the point is, regardless of your pigment, it goes in the skin and it stays there. So the wording in this bill actually allows the tattoo department to regulate all the procedures as they should, and it gives them the right to be able to regulate it so that people, and if people want to do it, they can get trained properly. So I wanted to point that out. Yes, and then I would like to summarize this and respectfully ask that that you take this into executive session today and vote it out of committee.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Are you getting a witness form? Okay. Or do we have anybody who would like to additional testimony in favor of? Seeing none. Anybody who would like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none. For informational purposes only. Seeing none. Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you all for your coming up and providing testimony. I appreciate that. And thank you, sir. We'll go on to our, do you have any closing remarks?
No,
all right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. We're going to move on to House Bill 913, and if Representative Farnan is ready to go, we're ready to hear your bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. I'm Jeff Farnan from District Number 1. I'm here today presenting House Bill 913 and House Bill 428. This bill changes the number of children an in-home licensed daycare provider can keep. Currently, an in-home licensed daycare provider can keep up to 10 children with only 2 under the age of 2. This bill would allow for the in-home licensed daycare providers to keep 10 children plus 4 of their own children within the 3rd degree of consanguinity, which would be like children or grandchildren. It also changes the number of children that they can keep that are under the age of 2 to 2 children under the age of 1, with a maximum of 4 children under the age of 2. it's complicated. The reason we did this is because we don't want a provider to keep, say, 8 children under the age of 2. That would be too many. So we limited the number that they can keep under the age of 2 to 4. The main goal of this bill is to keep children in a licensed daycare facility where they are monitored by the state. They have food program. We have the fire marshal come in. So that is the main goal of this bill. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for our representative? All right, seeing none, we will have our first testimony in favor of. Seeing none, do we have any testimony that would in opposition to? Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Robin Shelp, and I am Director of Policy and Advocacy for Kids Win Missouri. We advocate on issues of child well-being, including early care and education. The legislature this year has been wonderful about working on early care and education issues. There's been a lot of funding for child care, and for pre-K. We all know that we have a child care crisis. And so I appreciate bills filed in regard to this. I had a wonderful conversation with Representative Farnan. I appreciate his desire to come up with solutions to the child care crisis. I also like I appreciate that changes were made from the original bill to what you're seeing here, but I'm still very concerned about safety and quality of care for our children in this bill. I just want to share just ratios in other states. So first, this applies only to family child care homes. That is one of the 3 licensing categories that we have for child care. And it's the one that, it's the smallest one. These are the children, if you're watching your kids, maybe in your living room, you use your own kitchen, your own bathroom, they're in your house. This isn't like in your basement that's completely separate for childcare or a home designed just for childcare. And the most children that we can have in a family childcare home is 10 children for 1 adult. Now, if there are younger children under 2, that ratio changes. You can only have, if you have 4 children under 2, that's all you can have. If you have 3 under 2, you can only have 5 to 7. It doesn't matter if there are 2 or 3 adults. The most kids you can have in this setting is 10, according to our state's licensing rules. That is the highest ratio for a family child care home in the entire country. There are a few other states that have the 10-to-1 ratio like Missouri does. Everyone else is less. There are a few states who will allow more than 10, but when you have more than 10 children, then it has to have more adults. So the 10-to-1 ratio is the highest. And this legislation would allow that to be 14-to-1. That's a lot of children for 1 adult. And this is not a slam on providers. We have amazing providers in our states. This has nothing to do with the providers. It's the nature of children. Children were created to be curious and learn through play. And so we want to make sure they're safe. So with that, I'll keep it brief and take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Senator Brown.
Thank you. I spoke with the representative the other day about this issue, and one of the concerns that seemed valid to me is that you have people in a scenario to where maybe you have 3 children of your own, you're operating a daycare like this, and I completely understand your concerns. But do you have any concerns also that it appears as though they might see the only alternative is going unlicensed, and then in that case, instead of having 3 of their own children and then 10 other children, or 13 people, 14 people, they could potentially have 20 or 0 limits, 0 oversight there whatsoever. So is there any concern about any unintended consequences to where, sure, you might be keeping the licensed providers with 1 or 2 less children, but does that compensate for the potential for all these other schools that are moving unlicensed to not just be subject to any number requirement, but not have any other kind of oversight either?
Right. So I think it's important to note that we do have requirements for unlicensed. I mean, you're talking going off the grid and doing something that's not legal. Right now, our requirement for unlicensed is 6-to-1. in this legislation, it would change that to 4 to 1. So it actually puts tighter restrictions on someone who is doing it unlicensed, and there is no exception for children. Now, when this law was originally passed in 2019, there was that concern that you had, and so last year they came back and said, okay, let's allow 2 children, school age or over, that are related to the provider to not count in ratio. So that concern was slightly addressed, but we have to remember a child is a child whether it's related to you or not. And we just want our kids to be safe.
Okay. Any further questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Brown, are you finished with your questioning?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Beck?
Yeah, good morning. So the origin of the original law is that didn't a child die? Isn't it
Yes,
Nathan's law?
Nathan, I want to say his last name is Welcher.
Yeah.
He died, it's been a few years, and I think someone else here may be able to speak more to that, but he was, he died while sleeping, he suffocated.
Yep.
So it was named after him.
You can do whatever you want.
He was in an unlicensed daycare when this happened. So when they made the restrictions, they punished the licensed daycare providers by not allowing them to keep but 10 children. So this is why my bill actually puts more restrictions on the unlicensed and kind of takes back to where we were before Nathan's law. So another point I wanted to make, sorry. Another point
Actually, it's up to the chair, but I don't even know if you're supposed to. I think
Right.
actually,
Oh,
Well, and I'll speak to that. So before 2019, an unlicensed provider could have up to 4 children, 4 to 1, but as many who were not related, well, who were related to them to that 3rd degree. So when they changed it in 2019, they said, okay, since we're going to have you count your children, we're going to take it up to 6 to 1. So
Okay.
just a little history on that.
okay. Are there any further questions for this witness? Okay. Or is there anybody here who would like to have testify for informational purposes? Or anybody additional questioning on opposition to? I have somebody else. Almost missed you. Apologies. And Representative, you'll have an opportunity to have closing remarks.
Hello, my name is Emily Van Shankoff, and I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Children's Trust Fund, and we are primarily a foundation and philanthropy that works to prevent child abuse and neglect in the state of Missouri. One of the things that I say all the time is that the Children's Trust Fund mission is to make Missouri the safest state in the nation to raise children. I really understand that we have a child care crisis right now, and there's a reason that you guys are looking at this bill is because we have a really serious problem out there in communities. But I would say, I would echo Robin's testimony that this bill and the parameters of it are outside of best practice and outside of what is and out of line with national standards and parameters. We are particularly concerned with the 4 unrelated children because we do not believe it is safe. I would also point out that I think that this further complicates an already confusing and burdensome child care regulatory structure. We absolutely have an issue with our child care regulatory structure. I think that this is a conversation that I would love to continue to have about what the best regulatory structure for our child care industry should be. There is work that needs to be done. But I would just say, I think that the issues that we are facing in child care in the state of Missouri, and I greatly appreciate the attention that we are giving to this policy issue, that they should not be solved by decreasing standards and by imperiling the safety of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, do we have any other witnesses in testimony in opposition to? Seeing none, anybody for informational purposes? Seeing none, Representative, do you have any closing remarks?
I do. Just in disclosure, my wife is a daycare provider, and she has state visits every 2 months. We have a food visit from the state every month. We have the fire marshal. She has to take online training classes, and she has to take CPR classes. The lady down the road, who is not licensed, is keeping 14 kids. She has none of that. No supervision. I mean, we don't know what they're eating, if they're being looked at. So that's what this bill is hoping to address.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, that'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 913. And seeing no further business coming for the committee, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. I have a second. We are adjourned.